Question 1. A California Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, is generally required for the purchase or transfer of any firearm. What is the typical duration of an FSC's validity? A. 1 year from the date of issuance. B. 3 years from the date of issuance. C. 5 years from the date of issuance. D. 10 years from the date of issuance. Answer: C. 5 years from the date of issuance. The California Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, is a crucial requirement for most firearm purchases or transfers in the state, ensuring individuals have a basic understanding of firearm safety laws and practices. This certificate remains valid for a period of 5 years from the date it is issued, after which a new certificate must be obtained. This 5-year validity period helps ensure that certificate holders stay refreshed on current safety standards and legal requirements. Always confirm your FSC's expiration date to avoid delays when acquiring a firearm. Question 2. Under California law, a handgun is generally considered loaded when transported in a vehicle if A. Ammunition is stored anywhere in the vehicle, even in a separate container from the firearm. B. An unspent cartridge is in the firing chamber or an attached magazine, or is otherwise readily accessible for immediate use. C. The firearm is not in a locked container, regardless of whether it has ammunition in it. D. It is contained within a locked glove compartment but has a loaded magazine inserted. Answer: B. An unspent cartridge is in the firing chamber or an attached magazine, or is otherwise readily accessible for immediate use. In California, the definition of a loaded firearm, particularly a handgun, is critical for understanding transportation laws. A handgun is legally considered loaded if there is an unspent cartridge in the firing chamber or if an unspent cartridge is in a magazine that is inserted into the firearm. This definition also extends to ammunition being readily accessible for immediate use, meaning it's not simply about ammunition being present, but its proximity and ease of use with the firearm. Proper understanding of what constitutes a loaded firearm is essential to avoid violating California's strict carrying and transportation laws. Question 3. What is the minimum age requirement to legally purchase a handgun from a licensed firearms dealer in California, absent any specific exemptions? A. 18 years old. B. 20 years old. C. 21 years old. D. 25 years old. Answer: C. 21 years old. California law, consistent with federal regulations, generally requires individuals to be at least 21 years old to legally purchase a handgun from a licensed firearms dealer. This age restriction is in place to promote responsible firearm ownership and reduce the likelihood of firearms falling into the hands of individuals deemed less mature. Understanding this age requirement is fundamental for anyone considering acquiring a handgun through legal channels in California. Always verify current laws, as specific exemptions for peace officers or military personnel may exist, but the general rule is 21. Question 4. When transporting a handgun in a vehicle in California, if it is not carried openly and unloaded in a belt holster, it must generally be A. Locked in the trunk of the vehicle, regardless of whether it is unloaded. B. Inside a locked container and unloaded. C. Unloaded, but can be kept anywhere inside the passenger compartment. D. Stored in a concealed holster on your person, provided you have a valid FSC. Answer: B. Inside a locked container and unloaded. California law has very specific requirements for transporting handguns in vehicles to ensure public safety. If a handgun is not being openly carried unloaded in a belt holster, it must always be transported unloaded and securely contained within a locked container. This requirement means the firearm cannot be readily accessible or loaded in the passenger compartment unless it's in a locked container, preventing unauthorized access or accidental discharge. Always ensure your handgun is unloaded and secured in a locked container when transporting it in your vehicle, like a locked box or case, to comply with the law. Question 5. The safe direction rule states that you should always point the muzzle of a firearm in a direction where a. It can be quickly aimed at a target if needed. b. An accidental discharge would cause no harm to people and minimal property damage. c. It is easy to see the bore and ensure it is clear. d. It faces away from the shooter, towards the range officer. Answer: B. An accidental discharge would cause no harm to people and minimal property damage. The first and most critical rule of firearms safety, often called the safe direction rule, emphasizes always pointing the muzzle in a safe direction. This means directing the firearm's barrel toward an area where, in the event of an accidental discharge, no one would be injured and property damage would be minimized, such as a sturdy backstop or the ground. Consistently controlling the muzzle's direction is paramount because an unintended discharge can only harm what the muzzle is pointed at. Always assume a firearm is loaded and pointed in a safe direction until you are ready to fire. Question 6. A California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license holder is generally prohibited from carrying a concealed firearm in which of the following locations, even with a valid license? A. A state park picnic area. B. A federal building open to the public. C. A private business with no weapons sign. D. A public sidewalk adjacent to a school. Answer: B. A federal building open to the public. Even with a valid California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license, there are specific, gun-free zones, where carrying a firearm is prohibited by law. Federal buildings, such as post offices, federal courthouses, and IRS offices, are prime examples of locations where firearms are generally forbidden, regardless of a state-issued CCW license. These restrictions are in place to enhance security in sensitive government facilities. Always be aware of both state and federal prohibitions on carrying firearms, as violating these can lead to severe legal consequences. Question 7. Before cleaning any firearm, the most important initial safety step is to A. Put on safety glasses and ear protection. B. Gather all cleaning supplies and tools. C. Ensure the firearm is completely unloaded and verify it visually and physically. D. Consult the owner's manual for specific cleaning instructions. Answer: C. Ensure the firearm is completely unloaded and verify it visually and physically. The absolute first and most critical step before performing any maintenance on a firearm, including cleaning, is to ensure it is completely unloaded. This involves removing the magazine, clearing the chamber, and then visually and physically confirming that there is no ammunition in the firearm. Performing this safety check prevents any accidental discharges during the cleaning process. Always confirm the firearm is clear and safe before proceeding with any handling or maintenance tasks. Question 8. In California, if a firearm is left unattended in a home where a minor, under 18, could gain access, it must generally be A. Stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device. B. Kept in a separate room from the minor, even if unlocked. C. Concealed from view, such as under a bed or in a closet. D. Accessible only to adults, even if not locked. Answer: A. Stored in a locked container or disabled with a locking device. California's Child Access Prevention (CAP) laws are designed to prevent accidental shootings involving minors by requiring responsible firearm storage. If a firearm is left unattended in a home where a minor could gain access, it must be either stored in a locked container or rendered inoperable by a locking device, such as a trigger lock or cable lock. This legal requirement aims to significantly reduce the risk of children or unauthorized individuals accessing and misusing firearms. Always prioritize secure storage to prevent tragic accidents involving firearms and minors. Question 9. What is the 10-day waiting period in California for firearm purchases? A. A period for the buyer to complete a firearm safety course. B. A mandatory delay between the purchase agreement and the physical transfer of the firearm. C. The time frame required to obtain a California firearm safety certificate. D. The period a licensed dealer must hold a firearm before selling it. Answer: B. A mandatory delay between the purchase agreement and the physical transfer of the firearm. In California, the 10-day waiting period refers to a mandatory delay that must pass between the time a firearm is purchased, meaning the dealer record of sale, or DROS, is initiated, and when the buyer can actually take physical possession of the firearm. This waiting period applies to nearly all firearm purchases and transfers, allowing time for background checks to be completed and for individuals to potentially reconsider their purchase. Understanding this crucial step is essential for anyone planning to legally acquire a firearm in California. Question 10. Which of the following is not an acceptable form of identification required when purchasing a firearm from a licensed dealer in California? A. A current California driver's license or ID card. B. A U.S. passport with proof of California residency. C. A birth certificate along with a utility bill showing current address. D. A valid military ID with permanent duty station orders in California. Answer: C. A birth certificate along with a utility bill showing current address. When purchasing a firearm from a licensed dealer in California, specific forms of identification are required to verify identity and residency. While a current California driver's license or ID card is standard, and a U.S. passport along with proof of residency can also work, a birth certificate by itself is not an acceptable form of photo identification for firearm purchases, even with a utility bill. The dealer needs a government-issued photo ID that confirms your identity and, often, proof of residency if your primary ID doesn't reflect your current address. Always bring valid, current, government-issued photo identification when purchasing a firearm. Question 11. When a shooter is at a firing range and a ceasefire command is given, the immediate action should be to A. Finish the current magazine before unloading. B. Unload the firearm, place it on the bench with the action open, and step behind the firing line. C. Continue shooting at the target until the range officer confirms the line is clear. D. Lower the firearm and wait for further instructions from the range officer. Answer: B. Unload the firearm, place it on the bench with the action open, and step behind the firing line. A ceasefire command at a firing range is a critical safety instruction that demands immediate and specific action to ensure everyone's safety. Upon hearing ceasefire, shooters must immediately stop shooting, unload their firearm, place it on the firing line bench with the action open, or cylinder open for revolvers, and then step back behind the designated safety line. This ensures all firearms are rendered safe and allows range officers to safely check targets or address any issues without risk. Always prioritize safety commands over any other action at the range. Question 12. If a firearm malfunctions, such as experiencing a click, but no bang, a safe immediate action is to A. Immediately open the action to clear the cartridge. B. Point the muzzle in a safe direction and keep it pointed downrange for at least 30 seconds. C. Hand the firearm to the range officer for inspection. D. Attempt to recock the hammer and try firing again. Answer: B. Point the muzzle in a safe direction and keep it pointed downrange for at least 30 seconds. When a firearm experiences a malfunction, such as a click without a bang, known as a hang fire or misfire, it's crucial to follow specific safety protocols due to the possibility of a delayed discharge. The safest immediate action is to keep the firearm pointed in a safe direction, typically downrange, for at least 30 seconds to account for a potential hang fire where the primer ignites slowly. After this waiting period, if it still hasn't fired, then carefully follow malfunction clearance procedures as outlined by the manufacturer or your instructor. Always treat every malfunction as if it could still be dangerous. Question 13. What is the primary purpose of requiring a personal handgun safety certificate or firearms safety certificate in California? A. To prove proficiency in marksmanship. B. To demonstrate knowledge of firearm safety laws and handling. C. To register all firearms owned by an individual. D. To allow concealed carry of firearms. Answer: B. To demonstrate knowledge of firearm safety laws and handling. The primary purpose of the California Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, formerly known as the Personal Handgun Safety Certificate, is to ensure that individuals acquiring firearms have a foundational understanding of safe firearm handling practices and relevant firearm laws. It is a mandatory prerequisite for most firearm purchases or transfers in the state. This certificate does not grant concealed carry rights or register firearms, but rather verifies a basic level of safety competence. Passing the FSC exam demonstrates a commitment to responsible firearm ownership. Question 14. Under California law, when transporting a rifle or shotgun in a vehicle, it must generally be A. Stored in the trunk, regardless of whether it is unloaded. B. Inside a locked container and unloaded. C. Unloaded, but can be kept anywhere inside the passenger compartment. D. Stored in a gun rack, as long as it is unloaded. Answer: B. Inside a locked container and unloaded. Similar to handguns, California law mandates specific requirements for transporting rifles and shotguns in a vehicle. These long guns must also be transported unloaded and stored within a locked container. This regulation aims to prevent easy access to the firearm and reduce the risk of unauthorized use or accidental discharge during transit. Always ensure any rifle or shotgun you transport in a vehicle is unloaded and secured in a locked case or container to comply with state law. Question 15. The 4 fundamental rules of firearm safety include: 1. Treat every firearm as if it were loaded. 2. Always point the muzzle in a safe direction. 3. Keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target. What is the 4th rule? A. Keep the firearm unloaded until ready to use. B. Be sure of your target and what is beyond it. C. Wear eye and ear protection at all times. D. Store firearms in a locked container. Answer: B. Be sure of your target and what is beyond it. The 4th fundamental rule of firearm safety, completing the crucial set, is, be sure of your target and what is beyond it. This rule emphasizes the importance of identifying your target positively and understanding the potential path of your bullet if it misses or passes through the target. Failing to know what lies beyond your target can lead to unintended harm to innocent people or property. Always exercise extreme caution and confirm your surroundings before taking any shot. Question 16. In California, it is generally illegal to carry a loaded firearm in public, even if openly carried, unless A. You possess a valid California Firearms Safety Certificate. B. You are on private property with the owner's permission. C. You are a peace officer, or have a valid concealed carry weapon, CCW, license, or meet a specific exemption. D. The firearm is a rimfire rifle or shotgun. Answer: C. You are a peace officer, or have a valid concealed carry weapon, CCW, license, or meet a specific exemption. California law generally prohibits carrying a loaded firearm in public, whether openly or concealed, with limited exceptions. The most common exceptions include authorized peace officers, individuals with a valid California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license, or those falling under very specific legal exemptions, e.g., while actively hunting in an authorized area, or in some cases, certain security guards. Simply having an FSC does not authorize carrying a loaded firearm in public. Always know the specific laws regarding carrying firearms in public to avoid serious legal consequences. Question 17. Which of the following is considered an unsafe practice when handling a firearm? A. Verifying the chamber is clear after unloading. B. Keeping your finger outside the trigger guard until ready to shoot. C. Pointing the muzzle downrange at all times while at the firing line. D. Relying solely on the mechanical safety to prevent accidental discharge. Answer: D. Relying solely on the mechanical safety to prevent accidental discharge. Relying solely on a firearm's mechanical safety device is an unsafe practice because mechanical safeties are just that, mechanical devices that can fail. The safety is a supplementary feature, not a substitute for proper firearm handling. Responsible firearm owners always adhere to the 4 fundamental rules of firearm safety, treating every firearm as if it's loaded and keeping their finger off the trigger, even when the safety is engaged. Always treat a firearm with respect and assume it can discharge, even if the safety is on. Question 18. If a person has been convicted of a misdemeanor for domestic violence, they are generally prohibited from possessing firearms under federal law for how long? A. 1 year. B. 5 years. C. 10 years. D. For life. Answer: D. For life. Federal law, specifically the Lautenberg Amendment, permanently prohibits individuals convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence from possessing firearms and ammunition. This is a lifetime ban, regardless of state law that might have different prohibitions for other misdemeanor offenses. This prohibition is a critical measure aimed at preventing firearms from being used in domestic violence situations. It is essential for anyone with a history of domestic violence to understand this permanent federal restriction on firearm ownership. Question 19. When performing a function check on a firearm after cleaning or assembly, which action is most important for safety? A. Testing the trigger pull repeatedly. B. Confirming the firearm is completely unloaded before starting. C. Lubricating moving parts during the check. D. Dry firing the weapon multiple times. Answer: B. Confirming the firearm is completely unloaded before starting. The most important safety action when performing a function check on a firearm is to first confirm, visually and physically, that the firearm is completely unloaded. A function check involves manipulating various parts of the firearm, including the trigger and safety mechanisms, and doing so with a loaded firearm presents an extreme danger of accidental discharge. Always ensure the chamber is clear and no magazine is inserted before commencing any function testing. Question 20. In California, if you move to a new address, you must notify the Department of Justice, DOJ, of your change of address for firearm records within what time frame? A. 10 days. B. 30 days. C. 60 days. D. No notification is required for address changes. Answer: C. 60 days. California law requires firearm owners to notify the Department of Justice, DOJ, of a change of address. If you move to a new residence, you must update your information with the DOJ within 60 days of the change. This requirement ensures that firearm ownership records are kept current, which is important for law enforcement and regulatory purposes. Failing to update your address could lead to issues if your records are not accurate. Question 21. For a California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license applicant, one of the requirements for good moral character typically involves: A. Having no history of traffic violations. B. Not having a record of arrests, even if charges were dropped. C. Providing character references and undergoing a background investigation. D. Being a member of a local firearm club for at least 1 year. Answer: C. Providing character references and undergoing a background investigation. The good moral character requirement for a California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license is a significant and often rigorous part of the application process. It typically involves submitting character references from individuals who can attest to your reputation, and undergoing a thorough background investigation conducted by the issuing agency. This investigation reviews criminal history, driving records, and sometimes personal interviews, to assess the applicant's suitability for carrying a concealed firearm in public. Understanding this comprehensive review is crucial for CCW applicants. Question 22. Which of the following best describes safe storage of a firearm? A. Placing the firearm in a hidden location, such as under a bed. B. Keeping the firearm loaded but secured with a trigger lock in a nightstand. C. Storing the firearm unloaded in a locked container, separate from ammunition, or secured with a DOJ-approved locking device. D. Leaving the firearm unloaded in a closet with the door closed. Answer: C. Storing the firearm unloaded in a locked container, separate from ammunition, or secured with a DOJ-approved locking device. Safe storage of a firearm is paramount for preventing accidents and unauthorized access, especially by children. The best practice, and often a legal requirement in California, involves storing the firearm unloaded in a locked container, such as a gun safe or lockbox, or securing it with a DOJ-approved locking device like a cable lock or trigger lock. Ideally, ammunition should be stored separately in its own locked container. This multi-layered approach ensures the firearm cannot be readily accessed or accidentally discharged. Question 23. What is the minimum caliber generally considered acceptable for shooting steel targets at a typical outdoor range with appropriate distances? A. .22 LR rimfire. B. .380 ACP. C. .45 ACP. D. There is no minimum caliber, the critical factor is appropriate distance and bullet type, no steel core/jacketed. Answer: D. There is no minimum caliber, the critical factor is appropriate distance and bullet type, no steel core/jacketed. When shooting steel targets, the key safety considerations are not primarily about the minimum caliber, but rather the distance to the target and the type of ammunition used. Steel core, armor-piercing, or steel-jacketed bullets can cause excessive damage to targets, and more importantly, create dangerous ricochets and splatter. Many ranges have specific minimum distances, e.g., 10 to 15 yards for handguns, 100+ yards for rifles, to allow bullet fragments to lose energy. Always follow range rules regarding ammunition type and distance to ensure safety around steel targets. Question 24. A California Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, is not required for which of the following firearm transactions? A. The purchase of a new handgun from a licensed dealer. B. The transfer of a shotgun between two private citizens. C. The acquisition of a firearm by a sworn peace officer or active duty military personnel. D. The purchase of a used rifle from a licensed dealer. Answer: C. The acquisition of a firearm by a sworn peace officer or active duty military personnel. While a California Firearms Safety Certificate, FSC, is mandatory for most firearm purchases and transfers in the state, there are specific exemptions. Sworn peace officers and active duty military personnel, including those in the National Guard and Reserves, are generally exempt from the FSC requirement when acquiring firearms. These individuals are typically presumed to have received sufficient firearms training as part of their official duties. Always remember that most other civilians will need an FSC. Question 25. If you encounter a situation where you need to check if a firearm is loaded, the first step should always be to A. Ask someone nearby if they know the firearm's status. B. Point the firearm in a safe direction. C. Engage the safety mechanism. D. Place the firearm on a table. Answer: B. Point the firearm in a safe direction. The very first action when handling any firearm, especially one whose status is unknown, is to point its muzzle in a safe direction. This immediately controls the most dangerous part of the firearm and ensures that if an accidental discharge were to occur, no one would be injured. Only after the muzzle is pointing in a safe direction should you proceed to check the chamber, remove the magazine, and confirm its loaded or unloaded status. Always prioritize muzzle control. Question 26. What does the term DROS stand for in California firearm transactions? A. Dealer report of sale. B. Departmental Registry of Safety. C. Data Record of Ownership. D. Dealer Record of Sale. Answer: D. Dealer Record of Sale. In California firearm transactions, DROS stands for Dealer Record of Sale. This is the electronic system managed by the California Department of Justice, DOJ, that licensed firearm dealers use to report firearm sales and transfers. The DROS system initiates the mandatory 10-day waiting period and facilitates the required background checks. Understanding DROS is essential for anyone buying or selling a firearm through a licensed dealer in California, as it is a central part of the legal process. Question 27. Under California law, what is the maximum capacity for magazines for most firearms, with limited exceptions? A. 5 rounds. B. 10 rounds. C. 15 rounds. D. 20 rounds. Answer: B. 10 rounds. California law generally prohibits the acquisition, importation, or manufacture of firearm magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds of ammunition, often referred to as large-capacity magazines. While there have been legal challenges and temporary injunctions concerning the possession of such magazines, the general rule remains that newly acquired or manufactured magazines must not exceed a 10-round capacity. It's crucial for firearm owners in California to be aware of and comply with these magazine capacity restrictions. Question 28. Which of the following is generally not an acceptable reason for an individual to be denied a California Firearm Safety Certificate, FSC? A. Being a convicted felon. B. Being subject to a domestic violence restraining order. C. Having insufficient knowledge of firearm safety laws during the exam. D. Having a history of traffic citations for speeding. Answer: D. Having a history of traffic citations for speeding. A California Firearm Safety Certificate, FSC, can be denied for various reasons primarily related to an individual's legal eligibility to own firearms or their demonstrated lack of safety knowledge. Convicted felons, individuals subject to restraining orders, or those who fail the FSC exam due to insufficient knowledge are all legitimate grounds for denial. However, a history of minor traffic citations, such as speeding, is generally not a disqualifying factor for obtaining an FSC, as it does not directly relate to firearm eligibility or safety competence. Question 29. When handling a firearm, what does keeping your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target imply? A. It means you can put your finger on the trigger as soon as you pick up the firearm. B. It means your finger should rest along the frame or slide until you have made the conscious decision to shoot. C. It means you can put your finger on the trigger only if the safety is engaged. D. It means you can only touch the trigger once you have pulled the slide back. Answer: B. It means your finger should rest along the frame or slide until you have made the conscious decision to shoot. The rule, keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target and you have made the decision to shoot, is a critical safety principle. It means your trigger finger should always rest alongside the frame or slide of the firearm, completely outside the trigger guard, until you are actually ready to fire. This prevents inadvertent discharges that can occur from flinching, startling, or simply mishandling the firearm while your finger is on the trigger. Develop the habit of keeping your finger high and straight along the frame until the moment you intend to shoot. Question 30. What is a key difference between federal and California state law regarding assault weapons for civilian ownership? A. Federal law prohibits all semi-automatic rifles, while California permits some. B. California's definition of assault weapon is generally broader and more restrictive than federal law. C. Federal law focuses on magazine capacity, while California focuses on cosmetic features. D. Federal law requires registration, while California prohibits ownership outright. Answer: B. California's definition of assault weapon is generally broader and more restrictive than federal law. California's assault weapon laws are notoriously complex and significantly more restrictive than federal laws. While federal assault weapon bans have expired, California maintains a comprehensive set of regulations that define and prohibit various firearms based on specific features, like pistol grips, flash suppressors, or adjustable stocks on semi-automatic rifles with detachable magazines, and sometimes by name. This makes California's definition and regulation of assault weapons much broader and stricter, leading to frequent legal challenges and changes. Always check current California-specific laws regarding assault weapon definitions. Question 31. Under California law, a person who is prohibited from owning or possessing firearms due to a felony conviction or other disqualifying factor is typically known as A. An unregistered owner. B. A prohibited person. C. A restricted individual. D. An illegal possessor. Answer: B. A prohibited person. In California, and federally, an individual who is legally barred from owning or possessing firearms due to various factors, such as a felony conviction, certain misdemeanor convictions, like domestic violence, or specific mental health adjudications, is officially referred to as a prohibited person. This term signifies that they are legally disqualified from acquiring or possessing any firearms or ammunition. It is a serious offense for a prohibited person to possess a firearm, carrying severe penalties. Question 32. Which of the following is a common symptom of hearing damage that can result from exposure to unprotected gunfire? A. Blurred vision. B. Temporary or permanent ringing in the ears, tinnitus. C. Numbness in the hands. D. Increased sensitivity to light. Answer: B. Temporary or permanent ringing in the ears, tinnitus. Exposure to the extremely loud noise of gunfire without adequate hearing protection can cause significant damage to your ears, leading to various symptoms. One of the most common and persistent symptoms of hearing damage is temporary or permanent ringing in the ears, known as tinnitus. This condition can range from a minor annoyance to a debilitating issue. Always wear proper hearing protection, such as earplugs and earmuffs, when shooting firearms to prevent irreversible hearing loss. Question 33. When purchasing ammunition in California, what is typically required at the point of sale from a licensed vendor? A. A valid California Firearm Safety Certificate, FSC. B. A demonstration of marksmanship proficiency. C. A background check for ammunition purchases. D. A 24-hour waiting period for all ammunition sales. Answer: C. A background check for ammunition purchases. Since 2019, California law has required a background check for most ammunition purchases made from licensed vendors. This means that when you buy ammunition, the vendor will conduct an electronic check through the California Department of Justice, DOJ, to confirm your eligibility to possess firearms and ammunition. This is a separate process from the FSC, which you generally need to possess in order for the background check to be successful. Always be prepared for this background check when purchasing ammunition in California. Question 34. What is the primary purpose of a firearms safety mechanism? A. To make the firearm completely incapable of firing under any circumstances. B. To prevent the firearm from discharging unintentionally when properly engaged. C. To automatically unload the firearm when activated. D. To indicate whether the firearm is loaded or unloaded. Answer: B. To prevent the firearm from discharging unintentionally when properly engaged. A firearm's mechanical safety mechanism is designed primarily to prevent unintentional discharges by blocking the firing mechanism when it is properly engaged. While a safety is an important feature, it is a mechanical device that can fail, and it should never be solely relied upon to ensure the firearm is safe. The safety does not unload the firearm or indicate its loaded status. Always treat a firearm as if it were loaded, keep the muzzle in a safe direction, and your finger off the trigger, even if the safety is engaged. Question 35. If a California CCW license holder is stopped by law enforcement, they generally have a duty to A. Remain silent and refuse to answer any questions. B. Immediately announce that they are carrying a concealed firearm. C. Inform the officer of their CCW license and location of the firearm, if asked or if it becomes relevant. D. Hand over their firearm to the officer for inspection without being asked. Answer: C. Inform the officer of their CCW license and location of the firearm, if asked or if it becomes relevant. When a California concealed carry weapon, CCW, license holder is stopped by law enforcement, it is generally considered best practice, and in some jurisdictions, a legal duty, to inform the officer of their CCW license and the presence and location of any concealed firearm. While not explicitly codified as a statewide duty to inform at all times, many issuing agencies stipulate this requirement, and it greatly enhances officer safety and reduces potential misunderstandings. Always act courteously, follow the officer's instructions, and communicate clearly about your CCW status to ensure a safe interaction.